My name is Ryan Johnston. For those who haven't met yet, I am fortunate enough to be the VP of Marketing here at Kisi. First off, I just want to thank you all again for being here, especially our speakers. We had them get here a bit, give them some coffee, make sure they are energized as well. But once again, just hope you're having a great day. Enough about me. I'm excited to introduce Michael Przytula. Did I get that? We'll go with that. Okay, Michael P. here. Michael is the Managing Director of Digital and Intelligent Workplaces at Accenture. He's built a career on helping organizations transform their workforces with technology, which is exciting. I also saw that he is the host of a podcast, the Creating Smarter Spaces podcast, so give that a listen when you get a chance as well. Otherwise, you're about to hear a great presentation on the principles of modern workplaces.
Thank you so much. This is what they taught us about at 7 o'clock in the morning, how we move the chairs off the table. All right, well, thank you very much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you all about the principles of modern workplaces and digital buildings. So a quick overview of who I am. I do work for Accenture. I run a consulting practice within the organization that is focused on helping our clients to build, especially organizations with large portfolios, how do we incorporate technology into the operation and the usage of the buildings that they have. But who is Accenture? For those of you, does anyone not know who Accenture is? Okay, good. Some things you may not know about us is we have somewhere between 720 and 750,000 employees around the globe. We have somewhere in the vicinity of 600 to 650 buildings at any given time. These things ebb and flow depending on acquisitions that we're making, etc. We serve about 9,000 clients around the globe, and we are not only a technology company, we're also the world's largest ad company. We're one of the world's largest business processing outsource organizations, and we do a whole bunch of other things. But essentially to say we are in the people business. We don't make products, we're all about people. And in the role that I play running our external consulting organization, my number one client just happens to be ourselves. So I get the fortune of being able to have a very large portfolio in a tech-forward company to basically be able to use as a little bit of a playground. We've been playing with technology in space for probably now about the last 10 or 12 years. We developed our own digital access solution back in 2015 on one of the first sort of iPhones that allowed us to provide some of that functionality before these things were live in the market, and have been playing with various different bits of technology around access, around experience, around ordering things, around accessing building services, all focused around, how do we build a great employee experience? How do we make Accenture a place that people want to come and work? And when they come to work at Accenture and when they come to the office, how do we make their time productive? Given the number of employees we have and given the number of people that we recruit from college every single year, we normally go through somewhere between 40 and 100,000 employees that we bring on in any 12-month period. So onboarding and attracting talent is huge for us. Now, as we sort of look forward, especially after 2020, right, when we started looking at what was the impact of COVID, what was the impact of hybrid working, the workplace has become all that more important as part of an attraction and retention strategy for us, as well as for many of our clients. Now, this is actually a picture of myself and one of my colleagues standing on the 67th floor of One Manhattan West, where we've just built a new office actually during COVID. And we stood up there on this day, we looked out over the vista, over the whole of New York. At that point in time, we had a 360-degree view from the top of the building. And I stood there with my colleague Ra, and I said, Ra, our vision for this building is if people come here and they leave and they say, wow, the view's really good. So we failed at delivering an amazing employee experience because we wanted the experience inside the office to be even more amazing than the amazing view that we have. And that was sort of the benchmark that we'd set for the team. And I really believe that this is true, right, for all of us, for all organizations, is it's not just about having an amazing building in an amazing location with a great view. It's all about what are the experiences that we build in there. And I strongly believe that technology and the way that we integrate the physical and the digital space together is key to enabling that. So I was listening to Joanne's discussion this morning. We're very big on design thinking, and the way that we go through these processes with our clients is we're like, let's think through the day in the life of an employee. What do they do when they get up? Or maybe even what do they do the day before they decide to come into the office? What are all the things that they're going to have to do? What are all the what we call friction points, the things that are going to make them stop and have to do something, right? I'm going to have to stop and think about, do I need to book a desk or do I need to book an office? I have to stop and work out, I need to get my card out of my bag to be able to get in the door. I have to stop at the elevator to do something. We think about all these different points and we try to work out, is there a better way that we can do this? Is there some existing information that we have? Is there some technology that we can integrate to either remove that friction point or that stopping point or make it a little bit more intuitive or make it a little bit easier? The biggest challenge that we face, and not just us, but also with all of the clients that we work with, especially in cities like New York, especially cities like London, where we are working as a tenant in a building, is the integration between the building systems from the landlord and the tenant systems that we bring together. And bringing those two things together is really where the magic happens. And is one of the big focus points that we have with both our tenant customers and with our landlord customers is how do we make that experience so that it is a lot better than the way that we're working today. So I always challenge everybody, we look at this slide that I had before about this great experience and pose the question like, if you wanted to do that today, could you do it? And the answer in the vast majority of cases is yes, but we can't do this, or we couldn't get this from our landlord, or our system doesn't do this, or this standalone platform that we've got won't integrate. And so the challenge that we're faced with is, again, employees that are coming to the office now are coming for something different, and experience is key to that. Okay? 3 things have changed since COVID. Okay? Employees that are coming to the office are looking for 3 things. They're looking for somewhere that is health and wellness focused. Right? They know what they can do at home. They know that if they're at home, they can go for a walk. They can get out in the fresh air. They're in a known environment to them. They want to know that coming to the office, they are going to be in a healthy and a safe environment. Okay? The second one is hybrid is here to stay. Okay? That's the pretty much universally accepted position now. There's some organizations saying, hey, you have to come in. Employees don't want to come in. There's other organizations that are saying, hey, we're never going to have an office. But the vast majority of organizations are going to land somewhere in the middle. Making hybrid work in the office is key. And when we talk about making hybrid work in the office, it's not just about having the tech to work. It's about now knowing that employees are actually going to come into the office less often. They are not going to be as familiar with the tools and the technologies that are there because they aren't going to be there every single day. And they're probably going to come into different spaces more itinerantly as well, right? The people that were up here speaking before about the fact that employees are moving between offices. They're moving from one office to the other. They're going and have meetings in other places. And being able to have a consistent experience as you go from one place to the other so that when I get to a new city and I go to a new office, I don't have to have a different badge or a different tool set or a different app on my phone or use a different reservation system to the one that I have. They're just looking for it to be consistent and easy. The other thing that they're looking for is obviously physical interaction, right? We don't go into the office. Most people, let me say, don't go into the office to go sit by themselves. They want to sit by themselves, they can stay home, okay? So they're coming in to consume space together. They're coming in to meet with each other. And so how do we use technology to help make that happen? So we have here 7 different things that are key to employee experience. One is personalizing that experience. So how do I make it about me when I come into the office? How do I use the information that I have? How do I use the information that is in the building, that is in the office, to help personalize and customize that experience for me? How do I connect employees to surrounding services? For example, maybe there's a digital sign in the office that not only tells me about what's going on in the office today, but also tells me about the status of the subway lines today, or is there any available city bikes in the bike rack downstairs outside of the office. I use this term, prove your performance, and this has become even more important, I believe, post-COVID, is we have all of these buildings that have certifications, LEED certified, well certified, et cetera, these stickers stuck outside the door. But there's nothing that's showing employees that this is actually the case, right? So proving your performance, showing things like we are monitoring air quality in the building, and this is actually what the quality of the air is right now. Not hiding it away and saying, yes, we monitor it, but we're not going to tell you what it is. Both from a tenant perspective, but also, I strongly believe, from a landlord's perspective. Right? If you're a landlord, you're running an HVAC system, for example, and you're saying, yes, we're taking care of the air, but you're not actually exposing that data or sharing that with tenants, we believe that's a huge value prop to tenants that are looking to move into space. Is like, if you're going to tell me you're going to look after these things, prove it to me. Give me transparency to that information. Seamless transitions. There's a lot of organizations now moving into buildings, or building owners have co-working spaces in them as well. So how do we give those employees that are coming into those buildings the ability to seamlessly move between space that's owned by or managed by you as a tenant and spaces that are provided you as a landlord? Again, don't make me go into multiple different systems. I want a meeting room here, I need a meeting room here, I have to go into a different tool, I have to swap around. Or maybe I don't have a login for that system. Maybe I'm the person from out of town that doesn't know that there's a separate system that I'm supposed to go to find this type of information. Openness on operational data. So this is more between, when we start talking about between the landlords and the tenants. Give me transparency as a tenant, or demand transparency from your landlord as a tenant about what's going on in the building. How are you making green choices about the energy that we're using? Tell me when you're turning on and off the HVAC that I'm paying for, right? Again, and going back to the air quality one is another big one. And then also providing people with digital choices, right? Do I have an app for the building? Do I have to use the app for the building, or can I use my own app and consume services from the building in my own app? I know that's a big one for us as Accenture. As I said, we have so many buildings. We have an app for our employees, and we don't use the apps for the buildings. We have apps for ourselves, and then we ask our landlords to provide us access to services in the building through our own app, so that our employees don't have to know as they go from one building to another, if I'm going to this building, I need this app. If I go to this building, I have to go get some other app. And so providing employees or your tenants the choice of, maybe I can use a building app, but what if, as a tenant, I want to consume services that are being published by the building? So when we talk about digital buildings, everybody wins in these scenarios. We get better understanding of what's going on in the building, both as a landlord and as a tenant. We can increase our workplace efficiency, and I know there was some questions down the front here before about how do we know about how many people are coming in, and are we using badge data from Kisi to work out occupancy within spaces. Again, when we've got a digitally connected infrastructure between the landlord and the tenant, we can get a much more richer picture about what's going on. We're improving employee satisfaction. We're being able to provide a consistent user experience across the board. And at the end of the day, we're reducing and able to reduce overall environmental footprint of services and utilities that we're consuming, both as a landlord and a tenant in the building. So from an employee perspective, one of the first things that people say when we ask them about coming into the office or what their day's like, they're saying, I want the workplace to be customized to me. I want it to support me in everything that I want to do. I want it to be able to seamlessly allow me to get access to the building, find the people I want to work with, find space that I want to consume to do, the tasks that I'm there to do in the day. I don't want to get there and have to fight with systems and tools to try and get the job that I've come to the office done. Okay? They expect things to just work, much more than we did in a pre-COVID environment. We used to come to the office, we'd walk into a meeting room, some things wouldn't work. Who's walked into the meeting room back in 2019 to do a conference call or something and find that the phone on the desk didn't work? And you just kind of went, oh, it's not working today. You either got up, walked out, and walked out of the room, or the person that you were calling got left out of the meeting. Right? The four of you sat around the table, and you didn't call in the remote person. Those types of things aren't acceptable to employees anymore. They expect if I'm going to come into the office, things have to work. Because if I can't do my job here and I can do it better at home, I'm just not going to come in. So really making sure that not only do we have the technology in place, but that we're also monitoring and managing that technology to make sure that it's available to support the purpose of the employee and why they come in. So today, the vast majority of buildings that are still out there look like this from a systems perspective. You've got access control, lighting, elevators, HVAC, all of these things are all in silos, and in many buildings, there's a whole bunch of other ones as well. The challenge that you have with this is they're all operated and implemented and function in isolation. And when we talk to organizations about building smart buildings or building smart offices, too many times still there's this discussion around, oh, we're going to put in a smart lighting system, or we're going to put in a smart access control system. But they're still being done in silos. And to make this really successful, we have to make that spin around to, from a design thinking perspective, and think, what is the experience of the people that are coming into the building? What are the experience of the people that are operating the building? And how do we provide them across the board services, across the board integration, to make sure that we get the best out of the tools and the platforms that we're building? And so to be successful in this, we really believe that there is a need to have a technology work stream that runs across all of these different parts of the environment to think about the user, whether that's the employee, the operator, the landlord's maintenance team, your own workplace efficiencies people, your security teams. What are the things that we can do, and how can we integrate technology across all of these different silos to deliver value and improve, again, those people's experience, not just in coming into the office, but in the way that they perform their job. So human-centered design, and again, it was lovely to hear Joanne's discussion this morning. As I said, we're very big into this, but it's really about focusing on the journey and not just the task. Like, what's this person doing through the day? Why are they doing it? How are they doing it? Are they doing it a certain way because they're forced to do it because of the systems and the tools that are in place? Or is there a better way to do it? And thinking about this, and we use the term with the child's mind, right? Of how, if I didn't have all these restrictions and I didn't have all of these preconceived ideas, how would this thing work? And it's more than just having systems and data. Vendor selection and product selection becomes key in this. And again, not just about I'm selecting an access control system, or I'm selecting a lighting system, or I'm selecting an automated blind system. The key to this is about understanding how they interconnect together and how can they feed each other. And how can one piece of information or one system feed information to another one to, again, help automate some of these processes, to help feed data and be able to give more insights about how the building's operating, how people are consuming space, or how efficiently things are happening. So this is the architecture that we are adopting ourselves, and that we're working with many clients to adopt as well, both from a landlord side and from a tenant side. Is yes, you've got all of these internal individual systems, but bringing them all together and exposing them out in ways to be consumed by the tenant, right? Through APIs, through digital tools, through cloud services that can be accessed regardless of who the tenant is in the building. And I can then, as a tenant, consume them from multiple different systems, multiple different tools, multiple different platforms, and then bring them into individual tools that I may be running across my entire enterprise. Okay? So it's a slightly different way of thinking about how we bring things together from those individual silos, but exposing them out as a set of services that may still be exposed as a single platform, but can be consumed across the board or integrated together in different data sets or automated together in different ways. So digital tenant services and this connectivity across the board, we believe, is going to be the new norm in Class A real estate across the board. It's becoming more than just a place where you've got a great view. It's becoming, how can I provide value to the tenant? How can I provide value to the person that's coming in? And all of that, we believe, is now going to sit in bringing together the physical and the digital space. Being able to power experiences that are more than just the view that's out the window, that are more than just the marble that I put on the floor, but making the space easily consumable for somebody and easily customizable for them for the task that they're coming in to do during the day. And to make this really successful, especially in the buildings that we see around here and in other buildings, other cities where we have these major office buildings, it's how do we make sure that I can provide them to my tenant that's probably got 10, 20, 50, 30, 100, or in our case, 600 of these things that may be from 500 different landlords, right? How can I expose these services and say, hey, I don't care who you're using or what you've done before, but I've got these services you can consume and personalize them into your own set of tools that you've got for your employee base across the board. So at the end of the day, this is all going to end up in easy integration with existing tools and overall reduction of cost for both the landlords and for the tenants, right? Especially if we start looking at things like, if I'm a landlord, for example, and I'm starting to expose services that are in and around the current area that the building is. That saves me as a tenant when I decide to open an office in that building from building those services myself. One common one that we've used as an example is if you have a food court in the basement of a building, okay? And I want to offer my employees the ability to see the menu that's at all of these food courts down in the basement. In the traditional way, I would have to build that myself in that building, and I have to go to each of those food court owners and I'd say, hey, can you give me access to the menu or upload it in a PDF file or something like that. But if I, as the building owner, did that and exposed that through digital means to all of the tenants in the building, I arrive there as the tenant and all that I have to do is plug into that feed and I can display it on my digital signage. That has saved me as a tenant a whole bunch of development work, a whole bunch of support work, and from the day that my employees get into that building, they're connected to the surrounding environment. They're getting more value out of being in that building than having me to have to build that myself. And as a tenant in that building, I'm willing to pay more to the landlord for doing those work for me because I don't have to do it myself. It also keeps me sticky to the building and it keeps my people coming in. So thinking about how we build those two connections between services that landlords offer and services that tenants can consume, we believe is one of the things that are going to make things more sticky, are going to improve experience, and is at the end of the day going to reduce overall cost across the board. So in the 3 minutes I've got left, I'm going to give you 5 lessons learned that we have learned out of doing this now for the last 7 or 8 years. One is there has to be a digital experience vision from the start, right? How are people going to consume the space? This is before we have a floor plan, before we know the building we're going to be in, what is the experience we want to give to people, okay? Interoperation can be extremely complex, as probably everybody in this building knows, especially with physical systems. And cloud platforms are really helping to do this. So the more cloud platforms you've got enabled in the building that you're moving into, or as a landlord that you can expose to your tenants, helps you remove all the traditional challenges we had around internal firewalls on LANs and me protecting myself against you and you protecting yourself from me, and putting these things up in the cloud, having secure APIs that we can use to just consume those services once we're authenticated. I mentioned before about choosing the right products is key. When we're building and designing space, we spend so much time thinking about the furniture, the chair, the color of all these different things that are going to go on there, and very little time traditionally thinking about the actual digital products that are going to the building, okay? That becomes just as key. It becomes just as much a part of the experience as the furnishing, as the color of the wall, as the types of chairs that go into the space. The other thing that we see continually is technology evolves so much faster than the things that get put into a workplace. We normally build a space, we fit it out, and we kind of leave it for 10 years, maybe 12 years. Some places maybe 15. We all know in this room that technology is evolving way faster than that. So making sure to design with that in mind, right? The tech in the building is going to change faster than the building itself. So making sure that these things are modular, that you can change them out, that you can upgrade them, that you can continue to evolve those spaces without having to go back and say, well, we put these things in 15 years ago or 10 years ago, we have to wait till it's depreciated until we can replace it. There has to be a new way that we think about the tech that goes in there. And again, ensuring that you have this API access to the tools and the systems that are in there. There's traditionally been in the prop tech space far too many siloed vendors with no access, proprietary systems that we can't get access to, that we can't integrate with. And again, going back from the start of saying, I've got a digital vision for how this is going to work. I'm going to digital vision for how things are going to operate, and making sure that you choose vendors and platforms that give you the ability to interact with their systems and tools is going to be key to making this successful for you long term. So with 2 seconds left on the clock, that's my spiel for today. As was when I was introduced, I do have a podcast called Creating Smarter Spaces. I talk about a lot of this stuff up there. Feel free to check it out. And have also just launched a very casual discussion on property tech with one of my industry colleagues from London called Michael Squared. We talk about some different topics that have come up, like we've discussed today, in a much more casual, laid back, and a little bit more humorous environment. But if you've got any questions, I'd love to take them. My details are also up here. I'd love to hear from anybody, but if I have some time for some questions. Yes, sir.
Someone asked me about build it versus buy it. Obviously, you're talking about building something here. How big is the team that's building this stuff, and who do they report to in the organizational structure?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we love to build stuff until it becomes mainstream, and then we get out of that business really quick. Because we know that while we're really good at building stuff, we're really bad, and it costs way too much money to try and maintain it yourself. So a lot of these things we'll build as concepts to start with and like prove out the fact, like, does this work? Can we get it to work? Is there an application for this for ourselves? The digital access one was a classic one to start with. We also built an IoT digital twin platform for our portfolio as well that we started to use. And once we got 3 buildings on and the market caught up to the platforms that we were building, we very quickly moved over onto a commercial platform, because you're right, maintaining these things and continuing to evolve them at the speed that the market can maintain them is not feasible. But for us to go out there and be first and try these things first and prove them out is just as important to us. So we tend to invest early on to build something, and then as soon as the market catches up to where we are, we switch over to commercial platforms. So, yes, sir.
First of all, thank you.
My pleasure.
Question. Your workflow, the assets in the building has a lot of data and valuable information for clients and users. How do you deploy in your thought and your design any interface with wearable AI? I go to the building and I say, I want to do this, like I came here today, the guy says, you better go in the corner, turn back and come here. What is that?
Yeah, so this is the key question at the moment. Everyone's asking about how do we integrate AI into all of this, right? There's lots of data in buildings. The challenge with building data today, especially at a portfolio level, is that all the buildings are measuring things differently, and there's no consistency. And so going back to some of that architecture, and again, for us, there's an architecture at a building level, and then there's an architecture at a portfolio level of how do we integrate all of these things together. We're working right now on using AI at a portfolio level as we are building and getting more and more data from our individual buildings, normalizing that data so that we know, for example, that occupancy in one building is the same as occupancy in another building from a measurements perspective. Are we measuring the same thing? Making sure that we're not measuring occupancy in one building but attendance in another building and calling it occupancy, because they're two different things. The same thing around utilization of space. But making sure that you can normalize that data before you throw any AI onto it, because if you can't normalize it, you end up with skewed results around, because the data is actually not consistent across the portfolio. Inside a building, it's a little bit different. We are using it and have been using it specifically around power optimization, HVAC optimization. We have a case study of one of our buildings in Spain where we were actually able to go back to our landlord and say to them, we can turn on the HVAC 2 hours later every day, and we can turn it off 2 hours earlier every day for most of the year. As we started to look at things like occupancy in the building, what the temperatures were in the building, how quickly the building naturally got up to temperature and sort of fell back below a threshold that wasn't acceptable for us. And we've actually got a financial case study that we've published on when we brought all of that data together that we didn't used to have, but we have now, to be able to go and say, here's how we've tuned things, and this is actually the money that we've saved from doing it. And that was one of our early findings from about 4 years ago, and have used that as the financial case study when we went back to the executive team to say, we want to invest in this, deploying it further, to be able to go and get the justification for continuing that program. So, yes, sir.
I work in a public high school, and if you want to find friction points, as you mentioned,
Yes.
there are Richmond there. So I wanted to thank you. Very inspirational, and I think I can go back and hopefully figure out some solutions to make the user experience, the students, have a more effective.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. But no, that is the key, right? It's walking a mile in the shoe of the person that's there, right? What do they? We think about it as like we walk through the day. I'm now stopped because I have to do something. What is it that I have to stop and do? Why do I have to do it? You know, I get some of my personal frustrations. You know, you go into some kind of system. Someone sends you an email and says, go register for something. You fill out some form with your name and your address or whatever, and then you go to the next step and it asks you for the same information again. You're like, well, you already knew who I was. I already gave it to you. Why am I filling it out again, right? That's just a very simple, classic example of like, that piece can be automated, but for the person that's built the tool, they've just thrown it out there. They don't use it themselves, but I've now given this to hundreds, thousands, potentially of in your case, students that have to go and do some extra manual step that we could have really automated for them. So walking a mile in the shoes of your employees, of your users, of your students is key to finding these friction points and then working out, right, how can we apply technology or automation to make them better. So thank you. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the actual Accenture app.
Mm-hmm.
You did mention a bit earlier that some of your employees use the offices, but also use the office spaces, co-working spaces.
Mm-hmm.
How exactly are you doing that integration right now? I know it's very dinky, it's too but how are you kind of managing, because to a landlord it's one-to-one, right?
Yes.
One building to one location.
Yeah.
But for co-working spaces, we're talking about hundreds of buildings.
Yeah, so we selectively use co-working spaces. We have mostly our own offices, and in places where we do have co-working spaces, they tend to be dedicated to us, so we're subleasing floors or whatnot. You know, again, as the size of the organization we are with our security requirements, we don't tend to go and use shared co-working facilities, okay? But definitely in the scenarios where I was in, for example, in LA the other day. We have a building down in Irvine where we have an office, but we don't have a very large meeting room there, and we needed a large one. Our landlord there has a very large shared space in the building next door, and in that scenario, we would say to them, okay, we have a booking tool that we use, right? Is there a way, and you know, again, it's an iterative process with some landlords to say, how do you manage that? Can we interface the availability of those tools together? And then we'd like to bring that over into our environment. Again, some of this stuff is aspirational. Some buildings it works, some buildings it doesn't. But having this kind of sort of architecture that I was showing on the screen before, and coming to our landlords as we're looking for new space, how does this work, right? How do you do this? And encouraging them to also change. So we're kind of trying to lead the market a little bit with this, and given the size that we have some gravitas to be able to do some of that. So we're trying to help ourselves and help everybody else all at the same time. So, yes?
So I love the idea you mentioned that, you know, the monitoring air quality and letting the employees know, because we're actually right near you in the
Yep.
SAP office, and we have so many people coming into your offices
It's such a, the air quality one, I have so many conversations around it because it's actually, it's a real firecracker of a topic because everybody says that they want to do it. Like, we want to put air quality in, we want to put more, we want to monitor it, and we want to make it good. And they say, but we don't want to show anybody. So why don't you want to show anybody? And they say, well, because if it's bad, they'll come and complain to us. Like, yeah, isn't that the point? It's like, no, because then too many people are going to complain, complain to us, right? But I think that there's, and I was just talking with somebody online about this the other day. This is something that the industry still needs to evolve, and I strongly believe that there needs to be financial incentives, especially put into scenarios where landlords are providing, say, for example, HVAC services and things like that. They have to provide, reliable plumbing. They have to provide reliable electricity. We should be getting to a spot where you have to provide quality air, right? And it should be written into the contracts. And some of the things that we see now is, yeah, I've called the landlord and I've told them, but it's been 3 weeks and they haven't done anything, right? Because there is no financial penalty for them not to do it, right? We have to keep the temperature right, but there's nothing to do with the quality of air. And I strongly believe that, there's so much data out there that shows that performance of people is very closely tied to the quality of the environment that they work into. That me as a tenant, do I really want my factory, my people environment running at 70% capacity? So anyway, I'm getting at the back. So thank you again for having me. I'm going to be around for a little bit, happy to take questions, but thanks to the Kisi team for inviting me, and hope you enjoy the rest of the day.